Hi, I'm James Brookes, and welcome to From the Factory Floor, a conversational podcast about all things startup and tech, brought to you by the folks at Thestartupfactory.tech. And welcome back to another episode of From the Factory Floor. As ever, I'm your host, James, and as ever these days, joined by my co-host, Nairi. How you doing, Nairi?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I don't think the train strikes have got too much in the way of my day. I know they might have affected you a bit more.
Yeah, caused me a nightmare this morning. And I'm really happy that we've got Matthew Codd with us today. And Matthew, I'll let you introduce yourself, but I've been really excited for this because I know it's a hot topic that many founders struggle with. So over to you, Matthew, if you want to do a quick intro.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, so I'm Matthew Codd. Have worked in B2B technology sales for the last 17 years and effectively been a sales leader for the last 10 of those, so VP sales and fractional CRO, with a real speciality on like pre-Series A B2B technology companies. About 16, 17 months ago now, we set up Cosmic Partners to help founders build repeatable sales motions effectively. So we do a lot of work around helping them get their processes set up, but then how do they actually transition from founder-led sales and ultimately help them recruit great talent. That's something I saw was a big challenge in my own career, basically. So that's kind of where Cosmic came about. But yeah, looking forward to the session.
Fab, thanks. So in case people haven't realised, we're going to talk about the hot topic and the probably number one thing that all founders seem to struggle with early on, which is sales. I just wondered, Matthew, I know you work with founders and businesses that are a bit later on than startups, but you're hugely generous with your time for startups as well, because obviously we want startups to grow into those businesses. I just wondered in the first instance if you could talk to us about some of the common problems or challenges early stage founders have when it comes to sales.
Yeah, it's a big, like, shifting gears from building a product to actually selling it is really difficult, and a lot of the time founders think just because they've got this great product, this great idea that it's going to be really easy and everyone's going to buy their product they spent hours and hours building, basically. And we spoke to a founder the other day together, Nari, and this was a quote that I shared on that call as well. But I've got this analogy that I feel like experienced buyers can really spot an inexperienced sales process. And if you have an inexperienced sales process, or if you're an inexperienced salesperson, in this case, founder, it really raises alarm bells sometimes. And people might be thinking, is the product too early for me? Is this the right company for us at our stage, and things like that. So leveling up your sales ability makes such a difference. And I'd say that, like, I see hundreds and hundreds of pipelines over the year. I probably speak to on average somewhere between 5 and 15 founders, every single week through different channels. And I'd say that for the things that I see as the number one challenges are definitely lack of discovery. So like founders like rushing into selling the product and the features and the functions and can't wait to show the demo. But actually slowing the front end bit down really makes a big difference. Really understanding the challenges that your product can help with that prospect makes such a difference. So definitely for me, the number one reason why opportunities don't progress or get stalled or get stuck is poor discovery. And the other thing, I think, really, once you've got those great meetings and once you've got found a great opportunity and hopefully done a great discovery, is getting stuck with one stakeholder. In businesses, there's most of the time there's multiple stakeholders, and it's really easy to get stuck with your champion or the one person that you've had the first conversation with. But having the ability to multi-thread an organization and sell to multiple people, create a business case that's going to be sold internally and effectively get people to do the selling for you internally becomes really powerful. So definitely like multi-threading. And then I think the third one, before I kind of pause for a minute, is actually knowing when to walk away. Like, when do we disqualify this opportunity? Because as a startup founder, like, one of the big things that you don't have is a lot of time. And if you spend time in the wrong places, the opportunity cost could be huge. You could be spending time on generating other opportunities or people in your pipeline that are a better fit. So actually knowing when to disqualify, which is a really hard thing to do, because you can get really excited about a big logo, a big name, a big company, whatever it might be. but actually saying to the prospect, we're probably not the best fit for you at this stage for these reasons, and leave it there basically, and reinvest that time in other places. So definitely, I think in summary, poor discovery, not knowing how to multi-thread, and not knowing how to disqualify, definitely like three big areas I see across all the founders that I speak to.
Thank you.
And I think that kind of matches with a lot of what we see with founders, where obviously when we finish with them, they've finally got the products. It's a lot of excitement, and then jumping straight into that sales process, or and trying to actually develop that from effectively base. Just trying to get actually trying to find that initial champion, especially in bigger organisations, seems to be a little bit of a sticking point. But then, like you say, being able to thread multiple people through an organisation to try and land a sale.
Exactly.
And understanding the sales cycles for bigger companies as well, and when things are likely to land, and when, like you say, when to disengage and maybe keep them warm and pick up later, or when to actually just disengage entirely and being fobbed off.
There's loads of sales frameworks and methodologies that you can use to help keep you on track. Some basic ones like Medic, then there's some more complex ones. Basic ones like Bant, and then more complex ones like Medic and Medpick and Challenger and Spin Selling. There's all these different sales frameworks and methodologies that are definitely useful, to be honest, because they help keep you on track and help know, have I asked enough questions? Am I speaking to the right people? Do I know the route to the economic buyer? Do I know the champion's problems? And then do I know when to keep going or to disengage? So I definitely recommend implementing or researching or upskilling on sales frameworks and methodologies, because they'll just help as a structure basically, and keep you on track versus just like going by your gut instinct.
Well, thank you. I think the other thing is for startups, they need to land sales quickly. And you've just talked about, which is probably quite alien to a lot of people, slowing down that sales process, because they feel like they need to see the revenue coming in next week. But actually what we're saying in some instances is slow and steady wins the race, doesn't it? Getting all that information first early on.
100%. I think we used the relationship analogy on the call that we had the family the other day, Nareen. But it's important to get to know the prospect. It's not a straight to marriage situation, and definitely slowing that beginning bit. Like I'd say with high conviction that 95%, if not more, of opportunities that I see that are founder led are won and lost because of the front end bit. So because of discovery, and most of the times they're asking me, "Oh, we've got some good meetings, but we can't close them. Can you help us close more opportunities?" It's never a closing challenge. There's never a closing issue. There isn't this thing that happens at the end where you press a button and it closes. It's always the front end. Sales is really basic actually. If you solve people's problems and you have a product that solves that and makes their life easier, saves them time, whatever the thing is going to be, it's actually really, really easy. But if you go down the selling a product route and selling on features and functions and demo, it always gets deprioritized in the not urgent bucket, nice to have, not a priority, don't have time, don't have budget. So it's actually really simple. If you just ask loads of questions, if you're naturally really curious, and then you diagnose a problem with your solution, it's a really big difference just makes a big difference.
I think there's a point there as well, Nairi, taking those into consideration, that these people are maybe having to slow down the sales cycle to try and make it more successful, get that discovery. Is there an element that people need to actually start the sales earlier? Because a lot of founders, I think, wait until they got the MVP. Is there an element that they should be starting the sales pipeline a lot earlier?
So I was going to ask you this, Matthew. So one of the ones we've been working with, I think, in hindsight, I think we started it too late. You wait till the MVP is built and then you start the discovery phase. But actually and this was something I was going to ask for founders that are in that early stage MVP process, when is the ideal time to start doing discovery conversations or filling that pipeline?
Before you've even set the business up, to be honest with you, because it's really easy to it's impossible to build an MVP if you don't know is there a market? Is this solving a problem? And that's where you can then fall into the trap of like trying to force a solution down people, but actually, so as part of the validation and due diligence of setting up the idea, just set up friendly conversations with people that you would love to sell to. So, for example, if you're looking to sell to HR directors, for example, set up 15-minute friendly conversations with HR directors and say to them, look, I'm thinking of building this product. I think it's got legs, but I'd just love to get your feedback on it. It is, and just ask some questions. What are the big challenges that you're facing at the moment in your business unit? What are your current goals, objectives, KPI? Like just dig, and then off the back of that, you'll know if there's validation in what you're building, basically. And ultimately, the MVP that you're then building is very much aligned to what your target audience has specifically told you in their own words. And that becomes really powerful, I think. But just building something that you think is going to solve the problems of your assumptions is a difficult way to look at things, I think. So personally, I'd set up a load of conversations with people and do due diligence really early before building the MVP. And then actually, when you have built it, you can actually go back to those people that you've had like mini discovery calls with people, and basically try and sell to them anyway, and say, look, when we spoke last time, you mentioned those are the 3 big challenges. Okay, guess what? I've built a minimum viable product. I'd love to show it with you and how it solves those 3 things. Would you be open to spending another 15 minutes with me? Yeah, sure, great, sounds good. So personally, I think it's got to be right at the early stages and set up those mini discovery calls before you've even built anything personally.
Fab, thank you. And one of the things I was going to ask about the discovery call is, what's your advice in terms of how you frame that? Because I think to frame it as a feedback session feels a lot less threatening, doesn't it, and oppressive than a sale. But if there is a mutual beneficial piece there, then perhaps it does turn into a sales opportunity later down the line. I mean, what's your advice in terms of how you get people to come on to those discovery calls? Obviously, everybody's quite time poor at the moment.
Yeah. As long as you can leave value on the table and you're not trying to sell anything, if you can give someone value, if you're giving value and you ask for learnings, you'll be surprised at how many people will be up for helping. Imagine if I give us that HR example, HR tech, example, then we're potentially selling to HR directors. Actually, there's loads of value that as a founder we can give to that HR director, because we would have spoken to lots of HR directors. We're embedded in building this HR tech piece of technology, where potentially might be technical founders, with some deep-rooted experience. As long as we can give something back to that person, so it's not a just take situation. These people also want to learn, and then there'll be a small nugget that in the founder's experience that they'll be able to trade off, basically. So I think as long as you're really okay of genuinely leaving value on the table, not selling anything, and framing it as a learnings conversation, it's actually really easy to do, in my opinion. And also there's lots of like networking events, right? So it's really easy to go to a networking event where there'll be your target market there, an evening type thing, or lunch or breakfast, whatever they might be. And you can ask people face to face in person, right? They're going to ask you, what company you're from, what is it you do. You can very high level say that you're, a founder of a business, you're looking to build something. We'd love to get some time, whether it's at the event or book in some time, a follow up time afterwards. So yeah, definitely don't frame it as a discovery call. Just frame it as a learnings conversation, I think, and have a way that you can give value back to that person. So there's a fair trade off.
Brilliant, thank you. One of the things I was also going to ask you is what your opinion is on free trials or free freemium models. So I know a lot of founders we speak to, we encourage not to discount. I personally think you end up in a race to the bottom, and I'm not sure how much value you get out of that. It's not the type of relationship that you want to build with a client, but that obviously is dependent on the product and the market. Sort of overall, what's your view on free trials and free offering value that way?
I think they're quite difficult to make work, to be honest, because it depends on the strategy. If it's like a product-led growth strategy and you've got like a freemium style product where you can get people using the tool, and then there's a way of gradually getting them to pay through gated features, I think that can be effective. But if it's just a free trial, I think it's really difficult to make it work, to be honest, because if a product, the biggest challenge with technology is getting adoption in the business. If you don't get adoption, if people don't use a tool, they won't pay for it, basically, and then it completely devalues it. So if they haven't gone through a buying process, if they haven't mapped out and embedded this solution as part of their day-to-day working, they just won't use it. They'll get a login, they'll log in once and then won't use it. And then you'll check in a month's time and they'll say, yep, sorry, we didn't use it, didn't get the value. So obviously we're not going to pay for it now. And it has the complete reverse effect. There are ways you can do things like proof of concepts or pilots, but in my opinion, they should be paid for. Because then there's a commitment on the table that they have to invest the time to get it set up, and that's a big challenge when you look at like down the line when renewals and customer success, like a big customers churn when they don't use a product. So if they don't use the free trial, then you're stuck basically, and then you're on the way harder end of trying to sell something that hasn't already worked out for them. It's actually easier to sell to them, uncover the pain at the beginning, sell something, even if it's a small amount, even if for the first early clients you're doing like you want the case studies and it's massively discounted or whatever, that's fine. But as long as there's a trade-off and they've gone through a buying process and there's money on the table so that they're committed and they're their time, I think that's really important, to be honest. I say, unless it's like more of a product-led growth product that you've built where there's a freemium offering and that's your approach to do like the land and expand type model. I mean, tools like HubSpot and Zoom.
I was going to say, I always seem to use HubSpot as an example because they do the free, if it's relevant, they do the free version.
Yeah.
And then basically for anything useful past that, you've got to unlock the features, haven't you? And it is
before you know it, companies spending 50 grand a year with them. They didn't realize. Unless there's that kind of model, then I don't think the free trial works.
I think one of the things we've seen work as well is when it's been co-developed, especially at the MVP stage. Always bringing that, what I said about bringing that sales cycle in earlier.
Yeah,
getting them in to the extent that they're effectively helping you develop the MVP. We've had it where people, even our clients, come and join our meetings during a project to actually make sure they're getting what they want out of it, giving them that bit of value, and actually then using that as the springboard to launch the MVP and get the sales pipeline.
People are very generous, particularly sort of in Manchester or in smaller ecosystems. They're very sympathetic and generous to founders and startups. And I always think as a startup, you've got a really limited amount of time, really, that you can call yourself a startup. You've got a limited amount of time where you can say we are launching a product, we're in the early stages. So use that. I think it's really important that you use that and you play on it and you say, as a founder, it'd be hugely beneficial to me if you'd give me 15 minutes of, play to an ego. Give me 15 minutes of your expertise. I'd love to understand more about the challenges in, larger successful organizations like yourselves. And people want to give a person time, so you build that sort of, we talk very much around founder-led sales here. I think in the early stage, founder-led sales is really important because people still buy from people, even though you're buying a SaaS platform. And I just wondered, what's your advice, or how do founders overcome selling when it's not natural to them, or they're more sort of introverted? And they find it difficult to have those conversations and picking up the phone and stuff. Is there any sort of advice or signposting you would give for those founders?
Well, the reality is, unfortunately or not, you have to be at a certain level. You have to get good and be at a certain level. Unfortunately, gets out of your comfort zone. You can build the best product, but if you can't sell it, to be honest, you're going to struggle. You're not going to be able to raise cash if you need to raise cash. You're not going to be able to sign those early customers, and the early customers have to be founder-led sales. I have loads of founders reaching out all the time saying, "Can you help me find a salesperson?" And my response a lot of time is, to those early stage businesses is no, because you can't hire someone to figure those early clients out for you. And getting that repeatability is the most important thing. And what I mean by repeatability is like selling to a bunch of customers or people that are using your product or service for exactly the same use case, which is very different to, like, let's imagine you want to sign 20 customers. If those 20 customers are all using your product or service in a completely different way, you don't have repeatability at that point, right? So ideally, we want those 20 customers that we brought on to be using us in exactly the same way. And those founder-led sales are the best way to help with that. The great thing about being a founder, to be honest, you can play the founder card. Like, people know that you're not a salesperson, potentially, naturally. You haven't got an account executive title. And a big reason why founder-led sales versus that transition from founder-led sales is completely different is because you can say, I'm the founder. You can lean on deep-rooted experience. You've built a product, maybe more of a technical person might not be comfortable with this stuff. But if you just get half decent at the basics, it will really make a difference when you're selling to people. So going back to the things we spoke about already, the discovery, the multi-threading, the disqualification, and on top of that, I suppose it's some of the other basics around, knowing how to build rapport, knowing how to set an agenda for meetings, knowing how to follow up with people, when to check in with them and drive those next steps. So if you get good at just some of the high level basics and you combine that with your founder experience, it becomes a powerful combination, to be honest. And people won't expect you to be rock star salespeople, but the founder element will kind of outweigh the rest. But if you have a crappy sales process and don't invest time getting half decent at sales, going back to what I said at the beginning, and the experienced buyers will really sniff out the inexperienced process, and it will raise alarm bells, and they'll think this company's just too early for us. But if you combine that with like basic sales training and methodologies, then it makes a big difference. So unfortunately, it's one of those things. If it doesn't come naturally, you will have to get like a half decent at, basically, to a point where you can sign and win like a certain number of repeatable clients. And the great thing after that is you can transition from founder-led sales, and you can hire people that this is more comfortable to, basically, and you can carry on potentially building great products, and you can have salespeople that are selling your product for you. So it's a short-term pain, until you kind of transition from that period.
Well, thank you. And that sort of leads me perfectly on to my last question I was going to ask you, really, which is around when is the ideal time to bring somebody in to support you with sales, and what are the various ways that might look like, particularly for early stage businesses that perhaps, I suppose it's chicken and egg, isn't it, but may not be able to financially commit to a high salary for a salesperson. What's your advice to when the right time is to start thinking about scaling out that sales team?
You need that repeatability. So you definitely need to have that repeatability. You need to know, some of the basic things around, the types of clients that we work with, the use cases, potentially a certain number, a certain target that you've worked towards. And to be honest, it's also important to get to a certain point that you can afford to pay someone with experience, because in an early stage business, bringing someone that hasn't done this before, hasn't worked for an early stage business before, is tough. So I think those early hires, to be honest, they need to be people with experience that can take some of the heavy lift. And the important things there are, to really build a strong job description that you use as a pillar point to know the type of person you're actually looking for. Not get excited about someone that's worked at a massive organization recently, because joining your startup is going to be a completely different role. But, once you've built the JD, having a really clear interview process, a strong final stage assessment, so you can assess people at the final stage with a strong criteria, like how are you grading these people, basically. And that final stage task should basically be a way to see how they would build a territory, how they're going to take your product or service to market. So and you get to see what it would be like collaborating with them. So I think, to be honest, it's definitely important to have built good repeatability, have built a basic playbook. Actually, it's something I always advise, is documenting the journey along the way. What does a good discovery process look like from what you've seen so far as a founder? Your ICP that you're going after, who are they? What do they look like? What are the personas? What are the objections you normally see when you say certain things? Who are the competitors? Having all this information on paper just makes it so much easier to onboard somebody, but also helps you look back and keep refining that as well. If it's all in your head without realizing, things will be changing over a course of time, and you won't be able to track what's changing. But the cool thing about it, if it's documented, it just massively helps with that transition as well, so that when we hire someone, we can give them the basics as to what we've seen working well, and they're going to come in and layer on top of that their sales expertise, basically to help with the smooth transition. But definitely that playbook is helpful. So I think the timing is a lot of times you'll know is when you've got the repeatability, when you're struggling in certain areas, you're having too many meetings, and you need an account executive. When you get meetings, you're really good at converting them, but you struggle with the top of funnel bit. and actually an SDR would be great to create top of funnel, because once you get the opportunities, you've got a really strong conversion rate. So once you've got more data, once you start having more conversations, once you force yourself to get out of your comfort zone and do some of the things and do all of the jobs, once you found that repeatability, you'll start to feel, looking at the data, as to who you might need and when you need them. But it definitely makes sense to hold off for as long as possible, so that you can also afford to hire the right level of person, to be honest. Otherwise, they just won't be experienced enough. They'll struggle. You would never have managed a person like this as a founder. Everybody's set up for failure, basically, and then 4 months later it doesn't work and you've burnt time, cash, runway, and the biggest cost, which is opportunity cost, by spending time in the wrong places, basically.
What's your opinion of outsourcing sales? So there are many different options out there where you pay per lead, per appointment, etc. Do you have a view on those?
Personally, I don't know, there's varying opinions here. Personally, I'm not a fan. I think sales has really evolved a lot over the years. As I said, I've done this for 17 years now, and it's very different selling now to what it was like before. And what I mean by that is, sales is way more than just like transactional relationships. So there's so many important things that salespeople have to do nowadays that are like must-haves, like social selling, like becoming those thought leaders on LinkedIn, for example, or just becoming real domain experts. And in my opinion, these outsource companies just don't scratch the surface. They can't get to know the business well enough. It's a transactional sales process. It's difficult to pivot because you don't know when to pivot, because they're not fully embedded. In my opinion, for early stage businesses, like someone needs to be, these early sales hires are effectively like mini entrepreneurs. They're real hustlers in the organization that one day might be trying one thing, one day might be trying another thing. They're going to events, they're prospecting to people, building rapport, building relationships with people. And an outsourced company just isn't doing that. Like they can put people in sequences, they can make some cold calls, but they can't go the extra layer deeper and remember Matthew from that specific company, because he sent me a few emails, he sent me some videos, we met an event, whatever we did, basically invited him, he joined our webinar, whatever, basically. And it's that whole cadence that is what selling is, in my opinion now. So I personally not a fan. I think the learnings that you get internally are really strong, and that's where I think holding off and doing the founder-led sales as long as possible. It's a time that you'll never get back, and it's a time that that's where you'll get most of the learnings for the rest of the journey. So it's one not to rush to be honest with to be honest with you.
And if you do it well, you'd never have to do it again, because you feel. That's why I always say to founders, like, I know you don't like it, but if we do this well, you can bring somebody in. You never have to do it again after that if you don't want to.
Exactly that.
Fab. And so, just finally, Matthew, I wondered if there were any sort of you've mentioned a couple of sales methodologies. Anything sort of signpost for people to look at, free resources, etc., that just helps them kind of tool up a bit in terms of a good sales process, or any sort of low cost channels that you recommend using that sort of bring in a lot of people top of the funnel? I think we both use Apollo AI as a good example, but there are plenty of others out there as well.
Yeah, there's to be honest, the great thing about content nowadays is there's loads of content available for free. None of this costs any money, and I think it's definitely worth finding some people even on LinkedIn, to be honest, that you might like their style, people that you can follow, that they might share advice, learnings, all of the time. But definitely, I feel like LinkedIn is a great place to get free content. There's so much out there. So thinking about some, maybe some sales leaders, revenue leaders that you can follow, and get daily tips and tricks, basically, that you can.
Don't worry, we're gonna link to your link. I will link to your link in.
Yeah, no, obviously,
don't worry.
I obviously share some of these, but there's obviously lots of people. There's lots of people out there, so it's definitely worth following some of the key hashtags and things like that, so to get some of this content. There's again loads of resources online, like HubSpot, to be fair, do a great job, using them as an example of having their different universities that they've got, and there's all sorts of great content out there. But I think that the main things to take away from this are get good at a few of the basic things. Like don't try and be a sales expert, because there'll be too much to do. Just get really good at the basics, and it's the basics that people a lot of times forget or don't know how to do, and it's those basics that go a long way, in my opinion. So focus on like 3 to 5 key areas that are really going to help transition, or like help you get to a point where you can transition from founder-led sales, and do those things very, very well, and combine that with your founder knowledge. And I think that plays a big difference. That I don't think there's any need here to try and read every single book and try and become an enterprise account executive overnight. It just won't happen, and that's not essentially your skill set. So I think just get good at 3 to 5 things and do those things really well. And if you're having enough conversations and you've got a good conversion rate, you're going to win customers. If you can tell a compelling story, especially at the MVP stage, that's what people are buying. As you said, Nari, that people are buying from people here. And if you tell that compelling story, your product actually doesn't matter. Like, to be honest, in my career, I've sold like multi-million-pound deals with not even doing a demo, just because we've done a discovery, uncovered problems, shown how we solve those over slides, told a great story. And people know you've got a technology. It's going to be the enabler, or ultimately the end. But the product shouldn't be the focus. It's selling change, telling that story. And if you get good at those bits that we've spoken about in this podcast already, I think it will go a long way.
Oh, amazing! Thank you so much. And I know you're really generous with giving your time up for startups. We've done a couple of 1-hour sessions with some of the startups that we've been involved in. If anybody did want to get in touch with you and just have a chat or follow you on LinkedIn, what's the best ways of getting in touch?
Definitely LinkedIn's definitely a good one. So Matthew Codd on LinkedIn. Obviously, I bitched limited with time, so I obviously won't be able to speak to everybody. I try and spread these out basically, but I do leave a couple of slots a week available where I just kind of give value back and share learnings. I post 5 times a week on LinkedIn. That's very like founder related content around like sales. So there'll definitely be some things on there that will resonate from what we've spoken about today. And as I say, if someone is interested in having a session with me, feel free to reach out, and I'll do my best to try and get something booked in where I can as well.
Amazing, thank you.
We'll appreciate that.
Hopefully we'll get you back to part 2 in a couple of months, because I still feel like there's loads of other questions that we've not even scratched the surface on, around resilience and handling knockbacks, and on picking a bit more about the sales process. So maybe we'll be able to put in a part 2 in a couple of months' time as well. So if anyone's got any questions or topics they'd like to cover with Matthew, let us know and we'll try and consolidate that.
100%.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
So useful. I think that, there's so many founders I can already think that I'm going to send this to make sure they listen to it. But I know that there is a lot of value on your LinkedIn as well. I often see stuff where I think, well, I'm going to send that, or, there's a point to expand on here. And I've made lots of notes as well. So we'll get something written up in terms of a blog. So really appreciate it, Matthew. Hopefully you're not inundated with lots of requests for time, but I know if you have got a couple of sessions, then they'll be hugely valuable to those founders.
No, thank you very much, Matthew. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, thank you very much. And everyone listening, thank you very much. And we'll catch you on the next one. I think
that just about wraps things up here. If you have any thoughts or questions on anything we said today, get in touch, whether that be through our Twitter @RealTSF, or email at hello@Thestartupfactory.tech, or feel free to drop in for a coffee and a chat. As ever, thanks for listening.